Hello my dear friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Barbara, and today we're going to be looking at the 8th house. So super excited to be getting into the 8th house. It's all to do with the sign of Scorpio and the planet Pluto. So basically the 8th house, it is ruled by the energy of sex, death, rebirth, joint finances, taxes, and the occult. So you might be wondering, what do all of these things have in common? Well, the lower version and aspect of Scorpio is control. They're always going to be looking for a way that they can control a certain situation, control maybe certain people, certain individuals, to basically get an outcome that they want. They could be doing this without realizing that they're doing this. It's just a shadow aspect of Scorpio. A lot of the time, Scorpio is going to be looking for loyalty, and their deepest fear is going to be betrayal. So they're going to basically see how they can manipulate a certain situation to get that loyalty in return, whether it is understanding a person really well, meeting all of their needs. And it's interesting because a lot of the time you have a lot of people basically sexualizing the sign of Scorpio, saying that they're, hypersexual and all these sorts of things. But with Scorpio, basically what happens is they learn how to use that sexual energy to their advantage. So they can be hypersexual, but they can also go into being asexual and even on withholding sex from their partners because of the fact that they use it as a form of control. Okay, it's a means to an end for them. They are very hyper aware of this energy from a young age. For some of them, it could have been either past life or current life hypersexualization at a young age. So whether that is just being very aware of it, a lot of the time it is to do with sexual abuse, especially in a past life, depending on where you have this 8th house energy in your charts. But they're very hyper aware of sexuality and basically of how to magnetize people towards them. Okay, this is really the scorpionic nature of things. And a lot of people talk about Scorpio in 7 different forms. I learned it in 3. Different people are going to have different animals. These are the animals that I learned. Basically, the lowest version of Scorpio is going to be the scorpion. Okay, this is when you're still in the shadow aspects, underdeveloped. You are, again, using the energy to control or manipulate certain situations or people around you. The second energy is going to be the eagle. Okay, so basically the eagle rises out of the scorpion and is now able to basically see things from a higher perspective. Okay, it is able to see things from a bird's eye view. And then the final aspect of Scorpio is going to be the phoenix rising. Okay, so that is the ultimate, most divine version of the scorpion. It's gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, okay, within their lives. This is very common for Scorpios. They're going to go through a lot of change, okay, again, depending on where you have this 8th house energy in your chart, but they're constantly going to be going through change until they basically learn how to alchemize. Okay, so the main thing for Scorpio is to learn how to transmute energy. Okay, that's literally one of the main tasks and main purposes for them incarnating in this particular lifetime, is to transmute energy. So a lot of the time they might find themselves in situations where they are in a very dense situation, okay, in a very dense maybe neighborhood they're living in a very whatever dense job, whatever it is, because they're meant to transmute that energy, okay, in the particular situation that they're in. And a lot of the time their bodies are being used as the vessels to basically transmute this energy. Okay, so the ultimate end goal basically for the Scorpio is to eventually get to this point where they're transmuting energy and they're aware of it. Okay, and the archetype I would call for the Scorpio would be anything to do with the magician. Okay, so they're very good at manifesting, they're very good at transmuting energy, but that's only when they're in their divine aspects. Up until they get to that point, you might find Scorpios who are in the lower version of themselves in get rich quick schemes. You might find them in circumstances, anything that gets money fast, okay, because Scorpio is always going to be looking to transform their financial status very quickly. Okay, they're on the opposition of Taurus. Taurus is always going to basically create goals and say, this is what I want. They like the luxurious things. Both of them, Scorpio does too. And I find that to be, maybe surprising for some people to basically want luxurious things, but they want the money, they want the status, they want the nice things, they want maybe like the big house, whatever that looks like for you. That's going to be basically Scorpio looking for this, security, financial security. A lot of billionaires are going to have 8th house energy in their chart. So, again, when it's in this lower aspect of itself, it's going to be looking at how can it transform its financial status quickly. So, you'll see a lot of Scorpios maybe, or people who have a lot of 8th house energy in their chart, getting involved in things like, again, gambling. It could be sex work, it could be prostitution, it could be get rich quick schemes, it could be stocks, but in the shadow aspect of it where they don't actually know what they're doing and they could lose a lot of money, right? And this is because of the fact, because they're not really learning, let's say, the stock market. They are just kind of jumping in there because they want to make money fast. Okay, so this is the lower aspect of Scorpio. You know, they might earlier in life, until they actually basically solidify themselves, they might get into a lot of financial trouble, or they might just struggle with their finances because they're actually meant to learn to master this energy around money, because money is an energy just like anything else. Okay, so but at the same time, you could have a lot of Scorpios who are wealthy at a very young age because, again, they could have gone into any of these industries and they could have succeeded. It really depends on the person's charts, but I definitely would say, you know, a lot of billionaires have a lot of eighth house energy in their chart. I find Scorpio to be, or eighth house to be, an accompanying energy. Okay, it really is, you know, like an add-on. So recently I did a few videos where we looked at the different careers, and there were a lot of questions on those videos basically asking, well, what about the eighth house? Because, you know, in a lot of those videos there wasn't eighth house energy, and I find eighth house to be like an add-on energy. So you can basically do whatever you want, but the eighth house is going to basically enhance it in the way of manifestation and looking at how you can, again, transform the energy of a situation. You have a lot of people who have a lot of scorpionic or eighth house energy in their chart getting into magic. Okay, because again, they're trying to cut the corners. I think that's the expression. They're trying to cut the corners to basically get to their destination faster. Okay, that's always going to be Scorpio. But even with spells, okay, in my opinion, I don't think that they really work because you're still not learning the lesson. Okay, a lot of the time spells could actually backfire on you, and it's interesting because it's a huge thing that's popular right now. That's a whole different video topic of its own. But again, Scorpio has to learn that on their own. Okay, they basically have to come here to master that. So finances and abundance is actually something that comes through the eighth house as something to master in this particular lifetime. They're basically meant to master the energy of creating not just wealth, just in general being abundant. Okay, and in this current physical reality that we're living in, it does equivalent to wealth. So that's really what the eighth house is all about. It's kind of like an add-on energy. So you'll see a lot of actors, directors, producers, people who are in the public eye might have a lot of eighth house energy in their chart because, you know, again, they're looking, like I said, for that, you know, maybe status or gain or control of some sort or power. Okay, so you'll see a lot of people who are in power might have this energy in their chart because, again, Scorpio, especially in its lower aspects, is always looking to gain power and control. It's very covert, okay, because it's not something that I find is talked about a lot with the sign of Scorpio, and it's not really something that you would think because they're more so like the quiet types, you know. People who have a lot of this energy in their chart, they could be the people who are in the back of the room observing everybody, okay, basically analyzing everybody, understanding everybody, what makes that person tick, why is that person saying that, why did that person react that way. That's really that eighth house energy in the person's charts. And it depends. Again, it really depends where you have it, because let's say you have Jupiter in the eighth house. Jupiter in the eighth house is basically going to either bring in financial abundance through a partner, okay, so after you get married, or common law for some people, but as long as you're in some form of union with that person, okay? Or it could also bring in inheritance, okay? So that's really the eighth house energy as well. Some people could have an inheritance in their life as well, especially if they have Jupiter in the eighth house. Again, we're working with the money, the energy of money. If you have, let's say, Venus in the eighth house, you're going to be going through a lot of transformations within your love life, okay? So you might be going through, unfortunately, a lot of circumstances until you find a person who is basically best suited for you, okay? You're basically clearing out a lot of this energy of, you know, death and rebirth, okay? That's really the theme with Scorpio. So it really depends on where they have it in their charts. If they have it, let's say, in Saturn, which is the career, they might go through a lot of transformation within their career, within their lifetime. So it really depends where you have that eighth house. For some people, they might be interested in being a medium, okay? Because a lot of the time, eighth house energy is really able to tap into the other side. They're very clairsentient, and eventually it could turn into mediumship for them. So they could do that as well. But again, that's a calling, okay? So it really depends, you know, where you're feeling called to go and what you're really feeling called to do. But again, that's really that eighth house energy in your chart. So it really depends. It really depends on the individual, what it is that they want to do, where they feel like they're being called. A lot of the time, and one of the main things to understand with Scorpio is to basically not use sexuality in the lower aspect of it. So basically, sexual energy is a it's an energy, okay? So it's the creative energy, it's the creator's energy, and you know, it's been very like what's the word, we have it as a huge wounding in the collective because people are either hypersexualized or they're suppressed, right? But it's the creative energy, it really is. So Scorpio is very hyper aware of that, okay? As I mentioned earlier as well, you know, there could have been something that happened earlier on in life where they become basically very hyper aware of how to lure people in using their sexual energy and like that seductive type of energy. So really what Scorpio is meant to do is they're basically meant to learn to use this in the light aspects, okay? Basically meant to learn to use this sexual energy in the way of creating, in the way of being creative, to basically magnetize opportunities to yourself. So that's the ultimate end goal with the 8th house. They're meant to learn to magnetize opportunities to themselves. Well, most people I find are actually meant to learn that, but especially with that scorpionic sexual energy, they're meant to basically learn to magnetize things to themselves instead of them, you know, going out of the way to get what they want with manipulation, okay? That's the biggest thing with Scorpio. They're meant to learn not to manipulate, okay? Because I'm sure if some of you, or maybe you have scorpionic energy yourself, you know, I find this scorpionic energy kind of like sometimes this vortex, okay? People get sucked into it without even realizing that they're getting sucked into it, because Scorpio is very mysterious. They're very, like I said, they tend to be quiet. Not always, it depends on the rest of your charts, okay? If you have, let's say, air signs in there, you might be more talkative, but you know, Scorpio tends to be more brooding, mysterious, behind the scenes. They always give off the impression, I know something that you don't, okay? Or I know better than you, or there's like this like underlying confidence, because that's just the energy that Scorpio brings in. And it's really important not to get sucked into that, okay? Especially, again, if that person is involved with lower level energies and lower level things. Because the thing is with Scorpio too, what they need to understand is if they fall into the dark side of magic or the occult or spells or anything of that sort, a lot of the time it backfires on them, okay? On that particular person. Whoever is doing the spells, because again, you are cutting corners and cutting corners, and you're trying to create something without understanding that you can create it yourself, if that makes sense, okay? So especially with things, again, the occult, they're going to be very interested, or like the dark arts or like dark things, anything of that sort. The scorpionic energy is going to be very interested in this, because again, to them, it's like, I'm going to get my goal faster, okay? But the thing is, on the earth plane, we're basically meant to learn to be sovereign and meant to learn to be in our full power without giving our power away to, let's say, a different entity, a different person, a deity even, okay? So even when you're working with deities and gods and goddesses, you're still basically taking that power away from yourself and giving it to another entity. And a lot of the time, you know, this involves an energy of sacrifice, whether it's in the light side or the dark side, okay? But I'm not going to get too much into that. So it's interesting, because even if for people who are doing these sorts of things and they think they're doing it on the light side, a lot of the time it's going to open portals for them, because again, they're not really aware of the darker aspect of, you know, basically using this sort of external energy to help you get your goal, okay? And Scorpio is going to be very hyper aware of this. They're going to be very, very hyper aware of this, because again, like I said, their end goal is always to get things faster, okay? Because they know on a soul level, they know that they're able to manifest quickly. They know that they have this power within them, but maybe again, if they're in the lower aspects of themselves, they're not aware that they can do it themselves. So they're basically going to look towards the external way to get things quickly, okay? So that can manifest differently for different people, but just something to look for. And especially if you're personally involved with someone who has a lot of this energy in their charts, it's interesting, because Scorpios do get a lot of that, you know. They used to be ruled by Mars also, you know, so sometimes they get the reputation of, I don't even know how to word it on here, so it's like PG-13, but you know, that they're aggressive. Let's use that term instead. That they're aggressive, that they're plotting, okay, that they're behind the scenes plotting things. And they're very calculative, okay? They really are. They're very much, again, they're working with the undercurrent of energy. And I always felt like Scorpio should be a fire sign personally, but I understand why they're a water sign, because of the fact that they are working again with the undercurrents of energy, okay? It's with the spiritual plane. You know, a lot of the time I talk about spirituality like an iceberg. The physical plane is just the top part that you can see. The whole spirit world is everything underneath, okay? So, and Scorpio is hyper aware of that, okay? So a lot of the time they're going to, again, understand their partners really well, or the people they're involved with, or their business partners, depending on where they have it in their chart. They're going to be very good at reading people, understanding them, understanding their needs, wants, and desires. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Scorpio is always going to be calculating. They're always going to be thinking of, how can I get that goal? How can I get that thing? How can I get to where I want to get to, but faster? Okay, so ultimately, at the end of the day, what they're really, really meant to learn is to transmute energy on their own, and that they're able to do this and not really get sucked into the darker aspect of things. So that's why we have a lot of these random things put together in one. But when you really look at it, they all have something in common. And that's really what Scorpio, or the eighth house, or the sign of Pluto, deal with. Also, to touch back on the energy of Mars. So it used to be ruled by Mars, and it's interesting because Aries is ruled by Mars, and it's all about warrior, that warrior spirit. So if you have a lot of energy in your chart, you actually might have this natural warrior spirit to you because it used to be ruled by Mars. Okay, so really, really interesting. Scorpio is such an interesting sign. There's really so much to say, but this is really what they're doing. They're basically always working with the undercurrent of energy, the eighth house. And if they channel their energy in a good direction, in a positive direction, and the light aspect of themselves, they're going to be manifesting like this: left, right, center. They're able to magnetize things towards them. Okay, they're really able to use that energy. And this is the best part of the eighth house. It really is. It really is. And like I mentioned, a lot of wealthy people have a lot of eighth house energy in their charts. And this is why, because of the fact that they learn how to transmute energy. Okay, because on this earth plane, it's like, you have the physical things that you're seeing, but the majority of things are happening in the spiritual aspect and in the spiritual world. And Scorpio is really, really good at using this, at seeing how they can get to where they want to get to. So that's the energy of the eighth house. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of the day.